officials say the developers in charge of the building under construction that collapsed at the George in the Western Cape on Monday have not yet reached out to them. Earlier, it was confirmed that 81 people were on site during the incident and not 75 as previously believed. 37 people have been retrieved thus far, 8 of whom were declared deceased. 44 are still unaccounted for. Joining us to discuss this further is UCT Civil Engineering lecturer Gundo Maswime. Good evening, Gundo, and thank you very much for your time. So or at least we've been told engineers will be brought in. What would they be looking for in this particular instance?
Thank you. There are 3 important things that they would be looking for. The first one is from the rubble itself. They will be looking for the material that have been used, if they have got the strength that was specified. For example, the concrete, if it says is 25 megapascals or MPAs, they will take cores and take it to the laboratory and check its compressive strength to be sure that it is consistent with what was specified. The second thing they will be looking for is they will take the actual drawings themselves to look at the weight of the building and be sure that the structural members, especially the columns in this case, because the building seems to have been braced properly, so it didn't go to the side, it went directly down, to check if the columns that were specified were of the right dimensions and if the specification on the strength of concrete was fine. The third, which is less likely, is to look at the bearing capacity of the soil beneath the structure to be sure that the soil could carry the weight of the building with the foundation that had been specified based on the geotechnical investigations.
Mm-hmm. Now, in a multi-story building, what would be the most crucial part or aspect in the building phase that ensures a structure is secure?
There are weaknesses on a building that only manifest during construction, during the construction phase, especially if the construction is happening very fast. Concrete takes about 7 days to have an appreciable strength. So sometimes if the concrete had not sufficiently settled and the construction is happening very fast, that can be an issue. But here there is an issue that once the drawings were submitted to the building inspectorate in the municipality, the consultant or the engineer seems to have asked to make modifications, and the modifications included adding another floor on top and a basement at the bottom. While the foundation might have been sufficiently might have had the sufficient bearing capacity to take the building, there is a likelihood that the other structural members, especially the columns, might not have been revised when the submissions were made. So that might be the oversight that was made.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Labour Department has cautioned against, of course, speculating because there's no report as yet. So in the absence of any investigative report, can we just look at health and safety in the construction industry? Because the CIDB report states that the construction industry still accounts for more injuries and fatalities than any other sector. What informs the non-compliance there? Is it perhaps budgetary constraints or time considerations?
Most of it would be budgetary constraints more than time consideration, because you will find that in many instances, if it's cheaper to mix the concrete on site instead of ordering concrete from established companies that have got proper quality control, some contractors would then mix the concrete on site. Now, when you are mixing it on site, if you are mixing it on a payday, which is a Friday, sometimes the workers may not adhere to the specifications. So there are all those inconsistencies. But if you are dealing with structural members like concrete, that becomes an issue. However, the Occupational Health and Safety Act it's very clear about what happens in construction site, and it's very elaborate and progressive. And I think by just following it, we could avoid a lot of this type of disasters. And I think we must also add that this is not a commonplace in South Africa, and most of it is because of our elaborate legislative framework.
Speaking of legislative framework, because many people have lauded the framework, honestly saying, just like you, that we have the legislation, but the enforcement becomes the problem here because the inspectorate is understaffed. So we don't have enough inspectors to be enforcing.
Yes, while it is really the responsibility of the health and safety personnel that are on site and those that should come from the building inspectorate, and also the fact that the contractor that's working on a project like this, which is going to be a residential, should be registered with the NHBRC. The engineer who is on site and the contractor who is on site all have equal responsibility in making sure that all the specifications in the occupational health and safety have been adhered to. There are health and safety files that are kept on site with all the risks identified. However, a structural issue like that might just be more technical than it is about occupational health and safety. It could be a design issue, or it could be a quality control issue.
Gundo, thank you very much for your time this evening. That's UCT Civil Engineering lecturer Gundo Maswime speaking to us.